The phone rang at 2:03 a.m. sharp, a sound that sliced through the silence of my bedroom like a knife. I had always feared late-night calls. They never bring good news. My name is Clara Caldwell. I am 67 years old. And that call marked the moment my entire life split into a before and an after. I remember fumbling for the receiver, my hands shaking. A voice I did not know spoke quickly. "Mrs. Caldwell, this is Mercy Hospital. Your husband Henry suffered a cardiac arrest in his study. You need to come immediately." I didn't think. I pulled on the first coat I could reach, Henry's old wool coat that still hung by the door, and drove through the empty streets with my nightgown sticking to my skin from sweat and fear. The hospital lights blinded me as I ran inside, but when I got there, it was already too late. Henry, my husband of 50 years, the man who had been my anchor and my compass, was gone. People tell you the world stops when you lose someone. For me, it did not stop. It spun faster, crueler. I heard myself scream without sound, like the air had been stolen from me. I clutched Henry's coat tighter around me as if the threads could stitch my heart back together. Henry was a good man. He worked as an engineer turned real estate investor, steady and quiet. The kind of man who never forgot to kiss my cheek before leaving for work. Every morning, he brewed my coffee before I even opened my eyes. He had this habit of leaving little notes on the counter, crooked handwriting, ink smudged sometimes, saying things like, "Clara, you are my forever," or simply, "I love you." I kept every single one in a box by the bed. That night, after his death, I held one in my hand until my knuckles went white. At the hospital, they spoke of paperwork, of arrangements, of what would come next. But I could only think of what had just ended. My son, Michael, arrived later that morning with his wife, Vanessa. My son looked broken, his face pale, shoulders hunched as if the weight of losing his father pressed him down into the ground. But Vanessa, she came in with her perfect hair and flawless nails. Sunglasses perched through the sky outside was gray. She wept. Yes, but not like a grieving wife-in-law. Her tears felt measured, her hand squeezing mine for display more than comfort. I felt her fingers slacken the moment no one was watching. In those hours of grief, I noticed something that others didn't. Vanessa's eyes scanned the waiting room. Not at the clock, not at the floor, but at the man in a sleek suit sitting 2 chairs away. A real estate developer named Richard Harlow. Their brief glance, their whispered exchange, carved a suspicion deep inside me. It was in the days after Henry's funeral that I discovered what he had done. Henry had quietly transferred everything, 12 rental homes, a shopping plaza, and millions in stocks, into my name alone. Not in Michael's, not in Vanessa's, mine. He had done it 3 months before his death. I said nothing, not to Michael, not to Vanessa, not to anyone. I hid the truth even from my own son, because Henry had left me more than assets. He had left me instructions, scrawled in a letter I found tucked in his desk. "Clara," he wrote, "if you are reading this, I could not tell you in time. Vanessa's eyes are on the money more than on family. I fear she will steer Michael away from what matters. I put everything in your name, not for you to keep, but to guard. Guard Aaron's future. Guard Michael, even from himself. She will fight. Stay silent. Stay steady. The paperwork will shield you. Patience will be your weapon." As I read those words, my tears fell onto the page, smearing the ink. My husband's foresight became my burden. His silence became my vow. So yes, after Henry passed, I hid from my son that his father had left me 12 rental homes, a shopping plaza, and millions in stocks, all in my name. And I was grateful I stayed silent because days later, my daughter-in-law's next move nearly took my breath away. I did not know then just how far she would go. I only knew one thing. Henry trusted me, and I could not fail him. The morning of the funeral came with rain, not a downpour, but a steady, cold drizzle that soaked through coats and umbrellas, as if the sky itself was weeping for Henry. I stood beneath the black canopy outside the church, the wool coat clinging to my shoulders. Henry's coat, the one I had pulled on the night he died. The scent of him still lingered faintly in the fabric, mixing with the damp air. Friends, neighbors, and distant relatives filled the pews, their faces blurred through my veil of grief. My son, Michael, walked stiffly at my side, his face hollow, his eyes downcast. He looked younger than his 40 years, as though he had been stripped of his strength the moment his father's heart gave out. I reached for his hand, but he pulled it away too quickly, adjusting his tie instead. Grief had built walls around him, walls I could not yet cross. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, arrived in a sleek black dress, her hair styled in perfect waves that did not move in the wind, her nails freshly polished a pale pink. She wore oversized sunglasses, though the rain and clouds made them unnecessary. She clutched tissues, dabbing delicately at her cheeks. To anyone watching, she looked like the picture of a grieving widow-in-law. But I saw what others did not. Her tears were timed, a sob just as someone turned their head, a trembling hand at the precise moment eyes were upon her. When no one looked, her face flattened, her lips pressed tight with calculation. I felt the chill of it. Grief is messy, raw, unshaped. Hers was rehearsed, and it unsettled me. During the service, I sat in the front row, my grandson Aaron pressed against my side. He was 8 years old, Henry's pride and joy, a boy with a mop of sandy hair and eyes too innocent to understand the finality of death. As the choir sang, he leaned into me and whispered, "Grandma, is Grandpa still making pancakes on Saturday?" He promised he would. The words pierced me deeper than any hymn. My throat closed, but I forced myself to smile softly, brushing his hair back. "No, sweetheart. Grandpa can't make them anymore. But I will. They won't taste the same, but you will still have pancakes on Saturday." His little head nodded, satisfied, and he returned to drawing circles in the damp fog of the church window. In that moment, I realized Aaron was the mirror. His innocence reflected what was real, what was missing, what could not be faked. Henry's absence was written in his small question, a truth no adult could disguise. As the casket was lowered into the ground, Vanessa positioned herself near the center of the crowd. Her sobs grew louder, her body trembling just enough to draw attention. I noticed her glancing sideways more than once, not at Michael, not at the coffin, but at a tall man standing a few yards away. He was dressed in a tailored gray suit, carrying an umbrella no one else shared. I did not recognize him, but the way Vanessa's eyes lingered on him, the subtle lift of her chin, told me they were not strangers. Later, as mourners offered their condolences, I overheard a whisper from a neighbor. "That's Richard Harlow, the developer from the city. Strange for him to be here, isn't it?" I filed the name away in my mind, though my heart already knew it mattered. Michael, poor Michael, drifted through the day like a ghost. He accepted handshakes, received hollow words of comfort, but I could see he was lost, unmoored. When he finally sat down at the reception, Vanessa guided him with a gentle hand on his shoulder, her face etched in practiced concern. But as she leaned close, her eyes flicked again toward Richard, and a fleeting smile touched her lips before vanishing behind another tissue. I stood at the edge of the room, holding a paper plate of untouched food, and watched. My grief was real, heavy, suffocating. Hers was a costume she wore well. I knew Henry had suspected something before he died, but I had not wanted to believe it. Standing there, listening to the rain drum against the windows, I began to see clearly what he must have seen too. Aaron tugged at my hand. "Grandma, can we go home now? I'm cold." His small voice pulled me back to the present. I bent to kiss the top of his head, my heart tightening. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll go home soon." As I looked around the room, at my broken son, at my calculating daughter-in-law, and at the mysterious man in the gray suit, I felt a strange clarity rise through my sorrow. Something was wrong. Something was unfolding right in front of me. And though I said nothing that day, Henry's words echoed in my mind, words from the letter I had not yet shared with anyone. "Stay silent. Stay steady. The paperwork will shield you. Patience will be your weapon." In the drizzle outside, as umbrellas bobbed away and the graveyard filled with puddles, I promised myself I would keep my silence. But I also promised I would not close my eyes, because sometimes the quietest witness sees the most. 3 days after the funeral, I received a call from Henry's attorney, Mr. Dalton. He had been Henry's friend for nearly 30 years, a man of steady voice and measured tone. "Clara," he said, "it's time we read the will. I know you are grieving, but it cannot wait." The next morning, I dressed in a simple navy dress and wore Henry's coat once again. I felt him close when I wore it, as though his arms still encircled me. Michael drove us downtown, silent the entire ride. Vanessa sat in the back seat, scrolling her phone, sighing loudly, as if the traffic itself were an insult to her grief. Aaron stayed with a neighbor, too young to sit through such proceedings. Dalton's office smelled faintly of leather and old books. He gestured for us to sit at the polished oak table. Papers were stacked neatly before him, a sealed envelope resting on top. "This is Henry's last will and testament," he began, adjusting his glasses. "Dated 3 months prior to his passing." I folded my hands in my lap, my heart pounding. Henry had told me nothing before his death, but something in Dalton's tone told me this would not be simple. He cleared his throat. "To my beloved wife, Clara Caldwell, I leave all 12 rental properties currently under our portfolio, as well as the Caldwell Shopping Plaza and all stocks held in my investment accounts." The room froze. Michael's head snapped toward Dalton, his eyes wide. "All of it? To my mother?" His voice cracked, disbelieving. Vanessa's sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing eyes that burned hotter than the rain outside. "That's absurd," she snapped. "We've lived in one of those homes for over a decade. Michael deserves his share. This must be a mistake." Dalton's voice remained steady. "There is no mistake. Your husband was thorough, Mrs. Caldwell. Every line is in proper order, witnessed, notarized, legally binding." Vanessa leaned forward, her hands clawing at the table. "This is theft. My husband is Henry's only son. How dare he cut us out?" Michael's voice trembled. "Mom, why didn't Dad tell me? Why didn't he say anything?" His eyes met mine, desperate, searching for answers. I felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on me. In that moment, I could have spoken. I could have defended Henry's choice, explained his fears, his suspicions. But I remembered his handwriting, the words etched in the letter I had already found in his desk drawer, but had not yet read aloud to anyone. Stay silent. Stay steady. The paperwork will shield you. Patience will be your weapon. So I said nothing. Silence can be louder than any scream. I simply folded my hands more tightly, my face calm, my eyes steady. My stillness unsettled Vanessa more than words ever could. She shifted in her seat, her mouth twisting, because anger cannot fight against quiet certainty. Dalton continued reading. To my son Michael, I leave my personal library and my collection of tools from the workshop. May they remind him of the value of knowledge and of building something with his own hands. Michael's mouth opened, then closed again. His grief twisted into confusion, then shame. He slumped back in his chair, avoiding my gaze. Vanessa nearly leapt to her feet. Books? Tools? While she gets millions in real estate and stocks? This will not stand. I will contest this. Dalton placed his palms flat on the table. You are free to contest, Mrs. Michael Caldwell. But Henry was meticulous. The court will see his intention clearly. She glared at me as though I were the architect of her misfortune. Her words spat like venom. You think you've won, don't you, Clara? Sitting there so smug, letting Henry hand you everything. But this isn't over. I met her stare, unblinking. And still, I said nothing. The power shift was palpable. She flailed with words, while I held the strength of silence. Henry had armed me with this quiet, and I would wield it like a shield. When the reading was over, Dalton asked Michael and Vanessa to step outside for a moment. He handed me a separate envelope, its paper worn from being handled many times. Henry asked me to give this only to you, he said softly. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was Henry's letter. The ink faded slightly, but the words sharp. Clara, if you are holding this, it means my time has ended. I am sorry I could not explain in person. I saw Vanessa's intentions. I worried for Michael, blind in his devotion. I placed everything in your name, not for luxury, but for protection. Guard Aaron. Guard Michael, even from himself. Do not argue. Do not explain. Your silence will disarm them. The law is on your side. Patience will be your weapon. I trust you with all I have left, my family. Tears blurred my vision, dripping onto the page. My heart ached, but it beat stronger at the same time. Henry had trusted me completely. He had prepared me, even in death. I folded the letter carefully, sliding it back into the envelope. My hands no longer shook. As I stepped out of Dalton's office into the gray drizzle of the city streets, I whispered to myself, a vow only Henry could hear. I will stay silent. I will stay steady, and I will not fail you. The rain fell harder, but inside I felt a strange fire. Something had shifted. The battle had already begun. It was only a week after the will was read when Vanessa appeared at my door. She did not call ahead. She simply arrived, carrying a glossy leather handbag and a smile stretched too wide to be real. I invited her in, out of politeness, if nothing else. She sat down at my kitchen table, the very table where Henry used to read the morning paper. I set the kettle on the stove, the whistle filling the silence between us. She tapped her manicured nails against the wood, her leg bouncing beneath the tablecloth. Clara, she began, her voice syrupy, I've been thinking. I know things have been tense since the will was read, but we're family. Michael is devastated. Aaron is confused. And I think we should focus on healing. I poured hot water into the teapot and brought it to the table. Tea? I asked softly. She nodded, leaning forward. What I'm saying is, maybe the best way forward is to make things simple. Those houses, that plaza, the stocks. It's a lot for one person, especially at your age. You've already got your home. Why not transfer some of the assets back into Michael's name? We could sell a few properties, put the money in a joint account. It would keep peace in the family. I poured her tea, steady as stone. I stirred mine slowly, the spoon circling without sound. She smiled again, though her eyes flickered with impatience. Think of Aaron. He deserves stability. Fighting over all this will only make things harder for him. I finally looked up at her. My voice was calm, but my gaze was firm. Henry made his choices. He was careful. Her mask slipped. Ba is being unreasonable. Do you really want to split this family apart? Michael is hurting, and you're just sitting here clinging to paper. You're tearing us apart. I set down my spoon, folded my hands, and replied, quietly, No, Vanessa. I am not tearing this family apart. You are. Her mouth tightened. She had not expected resistance, at least not delivered in such simple words. Rage burned in her eyes, but she swallowed it down with a quick sip of tea. I did not argue further. I let silence fill the room, thick and suffocating. It unsettled her more than any shouting could have. She shifted in her seat, tapping her nails harder against the table. Words had always been her weapon. My silence dulled their edge. Finally, she stood, pushing her chair back with a scrape. You may think you've won, Clara, but you can't keep control forever. Michael is my husband. Aaron is my son. You can't cut me out. I stayed seated, calm, my hand resting on Henry's coat draped across the back of my chair. This isn't about cutting anyone out. It's about honoring what Henry saw and protecting what matters. Her nostrils flared. We'll see. She snatched her handbag and stormed out, her heels clicking hard against the floorboards. When the door closed, I let out the breath I had been holding. My hands trembled as I cleared the cups, setting them in the sink. Then I went to the drawer by the telephone stand and pulled out a plain notebook. On the first page, I wrote the date. Vanessa came to the house, pressured me to sign over assets, appealed to family unity, grew angry when I refused, left with veiled threats. I closed the notebook and slid it back into the drawer. Henry's words echoed in my mind. Stay silent. Stay steady. The paperwork will shield you. Patience will be your weapon. From that day on, I recorded everything. Every conversation, every glance, every odd occurrence. Silence in public, precision in private. That evening, I called Dalton. His voice was calm, reassuring, the voice of a man who had guided Henry through decades of contracts. You did well, Clara, he told me. Never sign anything. Keep records. The more detail you have, the stronger your shield will be. I felt her anger, I admitted. She wants control, and she thinks she can bully me into it. Dalton sighed. She will try every tactic. Manipulation, guilt, even using Aaron. You must prepare yourself. But remember, you have the law on your side. And you have Henry's foresight. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table alone, the steam from the teacups still curling into the air. I ran my fingers over the surface of the wood, tracing the scratches Henry's coffee mug had left over the years. Grief swelled in me again, raw and suffocating. But alongside it was something else. Resolve. Vanessa believed I was weak, an old widow clinging to scraps. But she did not know the strength that grows in silence. The kind of strength Henry had trusted me to wield. I turned off the light in the kitchen, the house falling into shadow. The notebook in the drawer felt heavier than paper. It felt like armor. I whispered into the quiet, to Henry, to myself. I will not fail you. And for the first time since that phone rang at 2:03 a.m., I believed it. One Friday afternoon, a week after Vanessa's visit to my kitchen, the phone rang again. This time, it was Aaron's school. The secretary's voice was careful, almost apologetic. Mrs. Caldwell, Aaron has been waiting for quite some time. His mother was supposed to pick him up, but she hasn't arrived. Could you come? I felt the sting of it before I even grabbed my keys. Vanessa had forgotten her son. When I arrived, Aaron sat on the bench outside the office, his backpack dangling from one shoulder. His small legs swung back and forth, patient but tired. The moment he saw me, his face lit up. "Grandma," he cried, running into my arms. I hugged him tightly, the knot in my chest both painful and tender. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered. "Let's get you home." In the car, Aaron chattered the way children do when they've been waiting too long. "Mommy said she was going on a trip. She told me not to tell Daddy. But I can tell you, right, Grandma?" I kept my eyes on the road. "You can always tell me, Aaron." He leaned closer, lowering his voice, though there was no one else in the car. "She went to Miami with Mr. Richard. He bought her ice cream on the beach. She sent me a picture but told me not to show Daddy." The words landed heavy. Miami. Richard. The man I had seen at the funeral. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Aaron continued, innocently, unaware of the weight of what he said. "She said Mr. Richard might get us a big house in Arizona, with a pool. But I don't want to move. I like it here with you and Daddy." I pulled into my driveway and parked, leaving the engine running for a moment. I turned to him slowly, my throat dry. "Arizona?" He nodded, swinging his legs. "Yeah, Mommy said Arizona is sunny and far away, but I told her I'd miss Saturday pancakes with you." That sentence cracked something in me. My heart swelled with grief and fury at once. Henry had been right. He had seen her ambition, her deceit, before any of us. And now, through the pure voice of an 8-year-old, the truth was spilling out. Inside the house, I set Aaron at the table with a glass of milk and some cookies. He munched happily, crumbs scattering, humming a little tune Henry used to whistle. I stood behind him, resting my hands on the back of his chair, watching the innocence in his movements. Then, the weight of it pressed me down. I walked into the living room, lowered myself onto the couch, and buried my face in Henry's coat. The scent of him was fainter now, but enough to summon memories. His laughter on Sunday mornings, the sound of his boots by the door, the scratch of his pen on those little notes he used to leave me. My body shook silently. I did not cry loud. The tears slid slowly, soaking the wool beneath my cheek. I whispered into the fabric, as if Henry could hear me through it. "You were right, Henry. She's planning to take him away, to take everything away. But I will not let her." Slow down at the pivot. That was the moment. My grief folded into resolve. I pressed the coat tighter, drawing strength from the memory of the man who had trusted me to guard what mattered. When I returned to the kitchen, Aaron looked up with cookie crumbs around his lips. "Grandma, are you sad?" I wiped my cheeks quickly and forced a smile. "A little, sweetheart, but having you here makes me better." He reached out his small hand, placing it over mine. "Don't worry, I won't let Mommy make us move. I'll tell Daddy if she tries." His faith in me was both a balm and a burden. He did not know how fragile his world had become, or how ruthless his mother could be. But his words anchored me. That night, after Aaron was asleep, I opened my notebook again. The pages were already filling. I wrote carefully, "Vanessa absent from school pickup. Aaron reports she traveled to Miami with Richard Harlow. He says she spoke of moving to Arizona permanently. Evidence of concealment from Michael. Potential plan to relocate child." I underlined Arizona twice. Then I picked up the phone and called Dalton. His voice came steady through the line. "You're doing exactly what you should, Clara. Record everything. A pattern will emerge, and the court will see it. But do not confront her yet. Patience, remember. Your silence will be stronger than any argument." After the call, I walked through the darkened house, checking each lock, each window. I paused at Aaron's door, watching him sleep, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. I whispered into the shadows, "I will keep you safe, no matter the cost." For the first time in weeks, I felt certainty. The battle was not about assets, not about pride. It was about protecting an innocent boy from a mother who saw him as a bargaining chip. I turned off the light, Henry's coat draped over my arm, and went to bed with a vow burning in my heart. It was a Wednesday evening when Vanessa called me out of the blue. Her voice was sweet, almost melodic, like she had rehearsed it. "Clara," she said, "let's have dinner. Just the two of us. I think we can talk this through, woman to woman." My first instinct was to refuse, but Henry's letter echoed in my memory. "Stay silent, stay steady, patience will be your weapon." So I agreed, knowing there was a reason she wanted me away from Michael and Aaron. She chose an upscale restaurant in the city, the kind with low lighting and glasses that sparkled like jewels under chandeliers. The maître d' greeted her by name. I followed in my plain navy dress, Henry's coat folded neatly over my arm. She looked at me with a smile that did not touch her eyes. We sat across from each other in a red leather booth. The waiter poured water and retreated. Vanessa didn't even glance at the menu. Instead, she pulled a slim folder from her handbag and slid it across the table. "I wanted to make this easier on everyone," she began, her voice smooth as polished glass. "We don't need to drag this through lawyers and courts. Here is a proposal. If you transfer the properties and the stocks into a trust under my name, I'll make sure you get what you want. In exchange, I'll allow you to see Aaron every weekend. We can even put it in writing." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words hung heavy between us. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She was bartering her own child as though he were a commodity. My throat tightened. My chest ached, but I kept my face still, my hands folded calmly on the table. I remembered Henry's words. "She will fight. Do not argue. Do not explain." Vanessa leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Think of it as a fair trade. You keep your dignity, I keep control, and Aaron doesn't get caught in the middle. Everybody wins." I lifted my water glass slowly, taking a sip to steady myself. I did not reply. My silence made her frown. She tapped the folder with her manicured nail. "You should read it. I had a lawyer draft it. Very professional. All you'd need to do is sign. I opened the folder carefully. The legal language blurred before my eyes, but the meaning was clear. Transfer of title. Transfer of funds. Her name everywhere mine once was. I closed it again, sliding it back across the table. Still, I said nothing. Her composure cracked. Clara, stop being stubborn. This isn't about money. This is about family. You're the one keeping us divided. I looked at her, finally speaking, my voice low and firm. No, Vanessa, you are the one dividing us. The words landed like a stone. She froze, then forced a laugh, sharp and humorless. You really think you can hold on forever? You're old, Clara. Do you really want to spend your last years in courtrooms and lawyers' offices? Just sign and you'll have peace. I'll even make sure Aaron respects you. Her arrogance nearly broke my calm. But then, in that moment, something sparked inside me. My mind returned to Henry's letter, the steady strokes of his handwriting. Patience will be your weapon. I looked into her eyes, and instead of fear, I felt clarity. Henry had seen this exact moment before it happened. He had known she would dangle Aaron like bait, and he had armed me with silence. I folded my napkin carefully and placed it on the table. Dinner was fine, I said evenly. Thank you. Her lips curled. You'll regret this. She snatched the folder, shoved it into her handbag, and stood up so quickly her chair nearly toppled. The waiter turned, startled, but she swept out without looking back. I sat for a moment longer, letting the tension drain from my shoulders. My heart pounded, but my eyes burned with a strange light. She thought she had cornered me, but in truth, she had revealed herself. When I left the restaurant, the city lights blurred through the misty air. I clutched Henry's coat close to me, whispering, "You knew, didn't you? You saw this coming." At home, I took out my notebook and wrote every detail. The restaurant, her words, the folder, the ultimatum. Then I slipped the notebook into my drawer and picked up the phone. "Dalton," I said when the line connected. She made her move. She tried to make me sign everything away in exchange for visitation rights with Aaron. There was a pause. Then his voice came calm and firm. "Good. That is the evidence we need. Bring me the folder if you still have it." She took it, I admitted, but I remember every word. "Write it all down," he instructed. "And Clara, you are stronger than you think. Henry was right to trust you." I hung up and sat in the quiet house. Henry's coat draped across my lap, my fingers tracing the worn fabric. For the first time, I did not feel like a widow, merely surviving. I felt like a guardian standing watch, silent but resolute. Vanessa had shown me her hand, and I had not flinched. Dalton called me the next afternoon. His voice carried that quiet gravity I had come to trust. "Clara," he said, "I think it's time you see something Henry left behind. He didn't want to burden you while he was alive, but he prepared for this. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" I barely slept that night. My mind raced with questions. What had Henry known? What had he hidden? By dawn, I was dressed and ready, Henry's coat around my shoulders, the familiar weight reminding me I wasn't alone. Dalton's office smelled of coffee and old paper. He closed the blinds before pulling a thick manila folder from his locked cabinet. He set it on the table gently, as though it were fragile glass. "Henry hired a private investigator 3 months before his death," he explained. "He suspected things about Vanessa that he couldn't ignore. These are the findings." My stomach turned as I opened the folder. The first photographs were stark. Vanessa stepping out of a hotel at night, Richard Harlow's arm around her waist. Another showed them laughing over dinner, their heads bent close, intimate in a way no married woman should be with another man. I flipped through the images with trembling fingers. Some were grainy, captured from a distance, but the truth was undeniable. My daughter-in-law had betrayed my son. She had betrayed Henry's trust. Dalton's voice was steady, guiding me through the storm. There are also messages. The investigator retrieved them legally from Richard's discarded phone. He slid printed transcripts across the desk. I forced myself to read. Vanessa. He's so blind. I could tell him the sky is green and he'd nod. Richard. What about the boy? Vanessa. Dead weight. A liability. I can't stand dragging him around. Once we're settled in Arizona, maybe I'll send him to boarding school. Or better yet, leave him with her. Her. That meant me. The words cut deeper than any knife. Aaron was not a burden. He was a child who loved pancakes on Saturday mornings, who hummed when he ate cookies, who whispered secrets to me like I was his safe place. And to his own mother, he was nothing more than dead weight. I closed the folder and pressed my hand to my chest. The pain was sharp, but beneath it, there was something else. Steel. Henry had trusted me enough to prepare this. He had known I would need proof, not just suspicion. He had believed I was strong enough to face it. Dalton leaned forward. You see now why Henry put everything in your name. He wasn't being cruel to Michael. He was protecting him. And Aaron. He wanted you to carry this responsibility, Clara, because he knew you could. I wiped my eyes with the corner of Henry's coat. My voice trembled, but held firm. Then I will. I won't let her destroy what Henry built, or what Aaron deserves. Dalton nodded. Keep documenting. Keep silent. The time will come to reveal all of this. And when it does, Vanessa won't be able to hide behind charm or manipulation. The evidence is clear. Until then, patience. That night, back at home, I moved through the house quietly. Michael had gone to bed early, exhausted from his grief, his trust still wrapped around the woman betraying him. Aaron was asleep down the hall. The door cracked just enough for me to peek in. I stood in the doorway, the soft glow of his nightlight spilling across his face. He was clutching the stuffed bear Henry had given him years ago, its fur worn thin. His small chest rose and fell, steady, innocent. The doorframe felt like a threshold. On one side was my sorrow, heavy and suffocating. On the other side was my choice, action, resolve, the duty Henry had passed to me. I gripped the frame and whispered, "This is where it changes." I stepped inside, knelt beside Aaron's bed, and brushed his hair back. He stirred, but didn't wake. My tears slid silently, dropping onto the blanket. For the first time, they weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of purpose. I sat there until the house grew still. The weight of the evidence pressed against me, but so did Henry's faith. He had seen the storm coming. He had chosen me as the anchor. When I finally rose, I pulled the door halfway closed, leaving a sliver of light shining into the hallway. It was symbolic, though no one else would see it. I was no longer standing in the doorway, torn between despair and action. I had crossed it. In the quiet of my room, I laid Henry's coat across my lap and opened my notebook. I wrote every detail, the photographs, the messages, the words dead weight she had used about her own son. I underlined it 3 times until the ink nearly tore the page. I whispered into the dark, "You trusted me, Henry, and I will not fail you." The night outside was silent, but inside me something had shifted. I was no longer only a grieving widow. I was a protector, a witness. And soon, when the time was right, I would be the voice that ended her charade. The summons arrived in a crisp, white envelope delivered by courier. My hands trembled as I opened it, though the contents were no surprise. Vanessa had filed a petition in family court, accusing me of greed, of wrongfully seizing the estate. In black and white, her lawyer had written, "Clara Caldwell, an elderly widow, is unfit to manage assets of this size. Her actions are selfish and detrimental to her son and grandson." I sat at the kitchen table, Henry's coat draped across the chair beside me, and read the words twice. The insult stung, but not because they called me selfish. It stung because I could see Vanessa's hand in every line, twisting my silence into weakness, painting me as a thief in my own husband's home. Dalton assured me we were ready. "This is exactly what Henry anticipated," he said. "We will go to court. We will present the evidence, and her performance will not survive scrutiny." The courthouse was gray and imposing, the kind of place where voices echo even when spoken softly. I wore my navy dress again, my hair pulled back, and carried Henry's letter tucked in my bag like a shield. Vanessa arrived in a tailored suit, her lawyer at her side. Michael followed, looking as though he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. His eyes avoided mine, and my heart broke at the distance between us. Inside the courtroom, the judge took her seat, and the proceedings began. Vanessa's attorney stood first, his words sharp and rehearsed. "Your Honor, this case is about fairness. A widow, Clara Caldwell, has seized millions in property and financial assets, leaving her son and grandson with scraps. We contend she is not acting in good faith. The assets must be redistributed." Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the very picture of a wounded wife and mother. She leaned into Michael's shoulder, whispering theatrically as if the judge couldn't see. Then Dalton rose, calm as ever. "Your Honor, the will is clear. Mr. Henry Caldwell meticulously transferred every asset into Mrs. Clara Caldwell's name 3 months prior to his death. This was not an oversight, nor was it coercion. It was protection. And we have evidence that Mr. Caldwell anticipated the very behavior you are witnessing today." He handed the judge the manila folder. Photographs, transcripts, the messages that had burned themselves into my memory. The judge flipped through them silently, her brow furrowing. The room grew tense. Vanessa shifted in her chair, her fingers gripping her tissue until it tore. Her lawyer sputtered, "These are circumstantial, irrelevant to the estate." Dalton's voice stayed even. "They are directly relevant, Your Honor. They show intent. They show that Mr. Caldwell's decision was not arbitrary, but necessary to safeguard his grandson and his legacy." Michael's face crumpled. He looked at me finally, his eyes filled with conflict. I saw the boy he once was, torn between loyalty to his mother and devotion to his wife. He rubbed his temple, muttering under his breath, "If it were me, if I had to choose, how could I?" The judge called a brief recess. I remained seated, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Vanessa hissed across the table at me, her voice low and sharp. "You're destroying your son. Can't you see? You're ripping his life apart." I met her eyes, steady and silent. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My stillness enraged her more than words ever could. Michael approached during the break, his voice trembling. "Mom, why didn't Dad tell me? Why did he trust you and not me?" His question cut through me like a blade. I wanted to take his face in my hands and explain everything that Henry had seen, that Henry had feared, that Henry had trusted me to shield him even from himself. But I remembered the letter. Do not argue. Do not explain. So I said softly, "Because he loved you." And I let the silence hold the rest. When court resumed, Dalton laid out the timeline with precision. The transfer of deeds, the notarized signatures, the letters Henry had written. Every detail reinforced the truth, that this was not theft, but foresight. The judge finally spoke. At this stage, the will stands. Mrs. Caldwell retains control of the assets. Further hearings will determine custodial matters. In the meantime, I caution all parties to remember the child at the center of this. The gavel struck, and it was done for now. Vanessa stormed out, her heels snapping like gunfire on the marble floor. Michael lingered, his eyes clouded with anguish. He said nothing, only pressed his lips together before following his wife. I stood slowly, clutching Henry's coat, my breath steady though my chest ached. The courthouse buzzed with voices, but around me it felt quiet. I had been accused, insulted, and doubted, but I had not broken. My silence, my calm, had spoken louder than any defense. Henry was right. Patience was my weapon. The courtroom was quieter that morning, as if everyone sensed the gravity of what was about to happen. Custody had become the central question. Who should guide Aaron's future? His mother, Vanessa, or me, his grandmother? I sat at the table with Dalton by my side. Across from us, Vanessa leaned forward, her lips painted a sharp red, her eyes fierce. Michael sat next to her, slumped, torn in ways only a son and husband could be. The judge called Aaron to the stand. My heart clenched as I watched him walk forward, so small in that large room. He wore his school sweater, sleeves too long for his arms, and clutched his stuffed bear, a comfort object the court had allowed him to bring. The bailiff swore him in gently, and Aaron nodded, swinging his legs as he sat. The judge smiled kindly. "Aaron, we just want to hear about your life. Tell us what it's like at home." Aaron looked around nervously, then spotted me. His face lit up, and he waved before remembering where he was. My eyes filled with tears, but I nodded to encourage him. He spoke in that clear, unfiltered way only children can. "Sometimes Mommy forgets to pick me up from school. I wait on the bench until Grandma comes. Grandma always comes." Vanessa stiffened, her nails digging into the table. Michael's head dropped into his hands. Aaron continued, swinging his legs. "I have asthma. Grandma remembers my inhaler. She puts it in my backpack every day. Mommy forgets sometimes. One time I couldn't breathe good, but Grandma helped me." The silence in the courtroom cracked like glass. Even the judge leaned forward, her expression shifting. A murmur spread through the gallery. Aaron hugged his bear tighter, unbothered by the reaction. "Grandma makes pancakes on Saturdays. Grandpa used to do it, but now Grandma does. Mommy doesn't cook breakfast. She says she's too busy." I pressed my hand to my chest, my body trembling. Each word was a knife and a balm. Painful because it exposed Vanessa's neglect. Healing because it came from truth spoken so purely. The judge cleared her throat gently. "Aaron, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?" Aaron thought for a moment, then nodded. "I don't want to move to Arizona. Mommy says we might go there with Mr. Richard, but I want to stay here. I want to stay with Daddy and Grandma." The entire room went still. Vanessa's face drained of color. Michael's head shot up, shock flooding his features. Dalton scribbled quickly on his pad, but I could see the flicker of triumph in his eyes. The judge dismissed Aaron with a soft smile. "Thank you, young man. You've been very brave." He hopped down, clutching his bear, and ran straight to me. "Did I do okay, Grandma?" he whispered. I bent low, kissing his hair. My voice broke, but I answered, "You did more than okay. You told the truth." When the judge recessed for lunch, the room buzzed with whispers. Vanessa tried to regain control, snapping at her lawyer, her face twisted with fury. Michael sat frozen, his gaze fixed on nothing. I remained quiet, my arm around Aaron, my silence stronger than any argument. Because in that moment, I understood. I did not need to fight with words. The truth had spoken for me. It had come from the mouth of a child who only wanted love and safety. The silence in the courtroom had shattered, and what remained was undeniable. The judge's decision came down swiftly after Aaron's testimony. Vanessa would retain visitation, but the court granted me temporary guardianship of Aaron until a final custody ruling could be made. It was a small victory, one wrapped in sadness, because no one truly wins when a child is caught between fractured parents. Still, Vanessa's reaction told me everything. The moment we stepped outside the courtroom, she turned on me, her face twisted with rage. "You old witch," she hissed, her voice sharp enough to slice through the crowded hall. "You think you've beaten me? This isn't over. You'll die clutching those houses, and I'll be the one to bury you in them." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Dalton stepped between us, his calm demeanor unshaken. "Mrs. Caldwell, I advise you to lower your voice." But Vanessa was past advice. She jabbed a manicured finger toward me, venom spilling from her lips. "You've poisoned my son against me," she spat. "You've brainwashed Aaron. You're a selfish, bitter old woman who can't stand to let go. You're nothing but a witch clinging to the past." I stood still, Henry's coat draped over my arm, my silence cutting deeper than any reply could. But her words burned, even as I refused to show it. Michael stood nearby, pale and silent. His eyes darted between his wife and me, but he said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't stop her. He just stood, head bowed, like a man drowning in a storm he had chosen not to fight. That silence from my own son was the sharpest wound of all. I could survive Vanessa's hatred, her insults, her schemes. But to look at Michael and see him avert his eyes, my boy, the one I had carried, fed, raised, was almost more than I could bear. We left the courthouse in separate directions. Dalton guided me to the car, his voice steady. "Don't let her words sink in. She's unraveling. That works in our favor." I nodded, but the ache in my chest remained. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. I tucked Aaron into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered that I loved him. His small arms wrapped around me, and I lingered there, breathing in his warmth. When he finally fell asleep, I closed his door softly and walked down the dark hall. In my bedroom, I pulled Henry's coat from the chair and sank onto the bed. The wool was worn now, but it still carried his scent, faint and familiar. I pressed it to my face, the tears coming hard and fast. "Henry," I whispered into the fabric, "I've lost you. And now our son. He can't even look at me. He's standing beside her, blind to what she is. How do I fight when my own child won't fight for me? I lay there, curled around the coat, as though it could hold me together. The sobs shook me until my body ached. I felt like the house itself might collapse around me, the weight of grief and betrayal pressing on every beam. But in the silence that followed, something shifted. I heard Henry's words in my memory: steady, calm, resolute. Stay silent. Stay steady. The paperwork will shield you. Patience will be your weapon. And then another truth rose up inside me, one I hadn't dared to speak until now. I lost Henry, but I cannot lose myself. The thought was like a flame flickering in the dark. I wiped my tears with the sleeve of his coat, sat up straighter, and looked around the room. My life had been built on sacrifice, for Henry, for Michael. I had given pieces of myself until I was nearly hollow. But that night, hollow turned to solid. I realized the pivot had come. I could grieve my husband and still stand strong. I could love my son and still fight his blindness. I could bear Vanessa's venom and not be destroyed, because my strength wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was quiet, patient, unyielding. It was the strength Henry had believed in when he left everything in my hands. I folded the coat carefully and laid it across the foot of the bed. No longer something to weep into, but a banner to carry. In the darkness, I whispered aloud, steady and firm, I will not fail. I will not break. I lost Henry, but I will not lose Clara. And for the first time since his death, I felt more than sorrow. I felt power. The final hearing arrived on a gray morning, the kind where the sky seemed undecided between rain and sun. I walked into the courthouse with Henry's coat draped across my shoulders, my hands steady on Aaron's as he skipped beside me. Dalton, my attorney and Henry's old friend, carried his briefcase like a sword. I had not slept much, but I felt calm. The storm was about to break, and silence would be my shield. Vanessa arrived moments later, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She wore a fitted red dress, a bold choice for a custody hearing, and her eyes scanned the room with defiance. Richard Harlow, the real estate developer I had first noticed at Henry's funeral, stood just behind her. Their closeness was not hidden anymore. Their whispers and glances made no attempt at discretion. Michael followed them, pale and hollow-eyed. He looked older than his years, and my heart ached at the sight of my son caught between loyalty and betrayal. The judge took her seat, calling the courtroom to order. Vanessa's lawyer stood first, speaking with all the confidence of a man rehearsing a script. Your Honor, my client only seeks fairness. Mrs. Caldwell is an elderly widow clinging to assets beyond her ability to manage. A child belongs with his mother. This is the natural order. Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, playing her role once more. She leaned close to Michael, resting a hand on his arm as if to remind the court that she was the dutiful wife and mother. Then Dalton rose. He was not theatrical. His voice was steady, his pace deliberate. Your Honor, the truth is not in appearances. It is in evidence. Mr. Henry Caldwell anticipated what we see before us today. He entrusted his wife, Clara, with guardianship of his estate because he knew the threats that surrounded his family. He opened his briefcase and handed the judge a thick binder. Inside were the photographs, the transcripts, the letters Henry had written. The judge flipped through page after page, Vanessa and Richard leaving hotels together, the messages calling Aaron a liability, plans to relocate to Arizona and discard the boy. The judge's face tightened. The room grew silent. Vanessa shifted in her chair, her facade cracking. "Those are lies," she blurted. "Fabrications. He must have set me up." Dalton did not raise his voice. These were gathered by a licensed investigator Henry himself hired, dated, verified, and corroborated. The judge leaned forward, her gavel tapping once against the bench. "Mrs. Caldwell, do you deny this relationship with Mr. Harlow?" Vanessa hesitated, her eyes darting to Richard. He looked away, unwilling to defend her now that the light had turned harsh. The silence stretched, and her denial withered before it left her lips. Michael sat rigid, his hands gripping the table. He looked at his wife, then at me. For the first time, his eyes met mine fully. I saw devastation in them, but also the first spark of realization. The judge delivered the ruling with clarity that cut through every pretense. Given the evidence of neglect, dishonesty, and intent to relocate the child without due consideration, custody of Aaron Caldwell is hereby granted to his grandmother, Mrs. Clara Caldwell. The mother, Vanessa Caldwell, is awarded supervised visitation only. Furthermore, the estate shall remain as designated by the late Mr. Caldwell's will. This court recognizes that his foresight was justified. The gavel fell. The sound echoed like thunder in my chest. Vanessa shot to her feet, her face twisted with rage. "This is a sham. You're ruining my life." She turned to Michael, grabbing his arm. "Say something. Don't just sit there." But Michael pulled away, his voice broken. "You lied to me. You lied about everything." His words were soft, but final. Richard stepped forward, touching Vanessa's elbow. "Come on. It's over." He guided her out, her fury spilling in incoherent mutters. The click of her heels faded down the hallway until there was only silence. Michael remained behind, slumped in his chair. I wanted to go to him, to hold him as I once had when he was a boy. But I stayed still. He needed space to face his truth. Aaron tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, does this mean I stay with you now?" I knelt beside him, tears blurring my vision. "Yes, sweetheart. You're safe with me." He hugged me tightly, his little arms fierce around my neck, and I felt Henry's presence in that embrace. Dalton closed his briefcase with a soft click. "Justice doesn't always roar," he said quietly. "Sometimes it whispers through the paperwork." I smiled faintly. Henry knew that. And now so do I. As we walked out of the courthouse into the gray light, I felt no need to gloat, no need to shout. Vanessa's schemes had collapsed under the weight of her own actions. The law had spoken, the truth had prevailed, and I had never raised my voice. That was the victory Henry had planned for me. Not loud, not triumphant in the world's eyes, but steady, silent, just. 3 years passed in what felt like a single breath, yet each day carried its own weight. Aaron grew taller, his shoulders broadening, his voice deepening, but his smile remained the same, bright, unguarded, full of promise. Life settled into rhythms I never thought I would know again. The battles faded into memory, replaced by the quiet rituals of love and stability. One spring evening, I found myself sitting in the front row of his school auditorium. The lights dimmed, the hum of chatter softened, and the red curtain trembled before lifting. Aaron stood on stage, dressed in costume, his lines clear and confident as he performed the lead role in the school play. My heart swelled so large it felt as though it might burst. When the play ended, the audience erupted in applause. I clapped until my palms ached, tears blurring my vision. Aaron bowed, his eyes searching the crowd until they found mine. He smiled, that same boyish grin that had once asked me about pancakes on Saturday mornings. Afterward, he hurried to me, his script clutched in one hand. "Grandma, did you like it?" he asked, breathless. I opened the script, and there on the inside cover was a small note written in his messy handwriting. "Grandma, I love you." The words stopped me cold. For a moment, I wasn't standing in a school hallway, but in my old kitchen, finding Henry's notes on the counter. His handwriting had been steadier, but the message was always the same. "Clara, I love you." The circle had closed. From Henry's ink-stained notes to Aaron's pencil-scrawled words, love had carried us through storms and anchored us in calm. I pressed the script to my chest, overcome by the echo of past and present intertwining. Aaron tilted his head. "Grandma, are you crying?" I laughed softly, brushing away tears. Just a little, but they're good tears. That night, after we returned home, I sat in my armchair with Henry's coat draped nearby. Aaron was upstairs, humming as he prepared for bed. I held the script in my hands, the note visible every time I turned a page. My voice, steady yet tender, filled the quiet. I used to think silence was weakness, that not speaking, not fighting back loudly, meant surrender. But I've learned that silence, when chosen with strength, is power. Henry taught me that. And now, Aaron reminds me every day. I looked at the camera of memory, the invisible audience I carried in my heart. My words weren't just for myself anymore. They were for anyone who had ever felt unseen, unheard, unloved. If you have ever been told your voice doesn't matter, know this: justice does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it waits patiently on paper, in the quiet choices you make, in the dignity you refuse to surrender. And when the time comes, that quiet strength speaks louder than any scream. I paused, breathing deeply, letting the truth rest in the silence. If you've lived through something like this, if you've carried pain in silence, I want to hear from you. Share your story in the comments. Because justice can be quiet, but it is real, and we are never as alone as we think. Before the story's end, I wanted to reach through the screen, to offer warmth the way Henry had once offered me little notes of love. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee? Or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing. Not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, I hope you carry this story with you. And remember, sometimes the miracle doesn't knock on your door. It waits quietly until you're ready to open your heart. I placed Aaron's script gently on the table beside Henry's coat. One carried the echoes of the past, the other the hope of the future. Both were testaments to love that endures, love that protects, love that heals. As I turned off the light, Aaron's voice floated down the stairs. "Good night, Grandma. I love you." And in the darkness, I whispered back, steady and sure, "I love you too."